The future is a wonderful thing to look forward to, whether it's driverless cars being the norm, Elon Musk's idea of transporting people from city to city with a rocket in under an hour, or even the concept of colonising Mars. The future is full of mystery and intrigue, which is where the setting of this review takes place. Released on August the 15th, 2017 for PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, we have Observer. Developed by Bloober Team, who gave us Layers of Fear in 2016, and published by Aspyr, Observer can be best described as a cyberpunk survival horror game. Set in the year 2084 in Poland, the game puts you in the shoes of Daniel Lazarski, a detective of the Observer's police unit. Observers have a device called a Dream Eater that they can use to hack into people's memories and fears. The game provides a little bit of history, detailing a plague known as the Nanophage which affected and killed thousands and thousands of augmented people. Then you had the Great Decimation, a war between the West and the East which brought upon the rise of the Chiron Corporation and the formation of the Fifth Polish Republic. Daniel gets a call from his son Adam, who appears to be in trouble. He traces Adam's call to a C-class apartment block which houses drug and hologram addicts, and our adventures in the future begins. But is this game any good? Find out in The Good. The game's dystopian setting and atmosphere was represented beautifully in Observer. The apartment block you spend a majority of the game in has a dark, depressing and disturbing feeling to it, and that's also reinforced by the attitudes and situations of the building's tenants. The game appears to be inspired by sources such as George Orwell's novel 1984, which you'll find early on in the game, with the setting of 2084 coincidentally being 100 years after 1984. The game also seems to take cues from the 1982 film Blade Runner with its atmosphere. It's also no coincidence that Daniel Lazarski is voiced by Rutger Hauer, who played Roy Batty, the antagonist of Blade Runner. The game is definitely a love letter to the dystopian cyberpunk setting. In terms of gameplay, I really liked how Observer messes with your head. As Daniel tries to piece together what's going on, he will have to hack into the memories and fears of a number of people. A lot of the time you'll find yourself going through constantly changing rooms, which Layers of Fear was really good at doing, and other times you'll shift from one situation to another. There's even stealth segments where Daniel has to avoid being detected and discovered by a monster which will proceed to kill him. The transitions between rooms and locations and how they're portrayed to Daniel as he starts to struggle between what he sees as reality and what's fiction was executed perfectly, and certainly works hand in hand with the setting and atmosphere to create an unsettling experience. Daniel will also need to take medication throughout the game to stabilise and synchronise his mental state. Poor synchronisation will visually show itself and makes it easier for Daniel to miss things. Throw in the investigation aspect where Daniel uses different forms of vision, which I'll go into a little bit more later, to investigate biological evidence and electronic evidence, and it becomes an excellent mix. The game's story I found was fairly straightforward to follow and kept me interested. I was still playing the game well into the early hours of the morning, wanting to know what happens next. As Daniel investigates, he figures out how each character related to one another and where they fit in the grand scheme of things. There's also side missions that you can complete which gives you a bit more insight into the interesting lives of the tenants of the building. You can also access computers throughout the game which tells you a little bit more about them, or you could just play the game within the game with Fire and Sword Spiders, a game where your character must collect all the coins and rescue the princess while avoiding or killing the spiders, with each computer unlocking a new and more difficult level. In all, I spent about 11 hours playing through Observer, and it's certainly not something I'd regret. But the game has its shares of flaws too, and let's observe them in The Bad. While I like the idea of electromagnetic vision and biovision to investigate electronic and biological evidence, I wasn't particularly too fond of the vision itself. Electromagnetic vision just paints everything in a green colour and makes it difficult to see. Biovision is pretty much like that too, just replace green with red. Having either vision on will turn surrounding objects into green or red blobs, and a number of things that you'll notice with electromagnetic vision isn't really relevant to the plot, such as identifying what a computer or video doorbell is, yet ignoring other devices. At this point I'm grasping for straws, but I did experience a couple of crashes while playing the game, and a point in the game where I fell through the floor. I know the game is meant to mess with your head, but I don't think that was supposed to happen. I also found that towards the end of the game, and I won't show the scenes as it spoils the plot, the voices were starting to sound garbled, which I initially thought was part of the game. Upon replaying the scenes, the voices sounded fine, so either this is an actual issue with the game, or the game is brilliant at masking the issues with its presentation. Other than that, there wasn't much else I wanted to talk about here, so we'll now move on to The Opinion. The future has now become a bleak, scary place, full of people addicted to projectors, investigators that can hack into your head, and an alarmingly large amount of pigeons. Observer though is an excellent mix of psychological horror and dystopian science fiction with moments of survival horror to add to the tension. The game itself presented its horror very well, and while it did have a couple of jump scare moments, I felt the game didn't really need to rely on them to get the message across. I think the game is a big step up from Layers of Fear in terms of setting, narrative and gameplay. If you want a game that can mess with your head, then look no further. Observer is definitely a game I would recommend. So with that, it's time for the rating. Observer gets this generic stock image of a hacker out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.